ultimately you would have to decide between Islam or nihilism, and it seems kind of absurd, right? I'll kind of give out my explanations and reasoning for why it would ultimately kind of break down to these two options that you would have to decide for in your life. So let's kind of begin. Either we were put here with a purpose, or we are just random accidents. We were kind of just randomly generated for no reason. These are like kind of, if you kind of want to analyze our existence, you would have to kind of put it into these two categories. Or either we're just accidental creatures, or we're engineered, designed, and put here intentionally. And so, right, if we're accidental creatures, what would that kind of entail? That would entail that our existence is pretty absurd, right? We're just without any type of purpose given to us. We have to kind of determine that for ourselves. And you can argue, well, why not? Why shouldn't we just determine our own purposes? Why would we need some other type of entity to give that to us? And the reason why would be because if we could just determine our own purposes, that would kind of, again, lead to some type of absurdity, right? Who's to say a serial killer deciding his purpose is to kill people? That's not morally right. Morals just become completely arbitrary. They become just matters of opinion, right? They don't have any type of objective grounding anymore. Whereas, so if like God, cosmic judge, a rule maker, a universal lawgiver, that's kind of a different paradigm compared to just the lawless nature, the lawfulness, well, not lawfulness, but you know what I'm trying to say. The complete, total moral depravity of a randomly generated universe that's just without any type of lawgiver, compared to like more of a created, generated, purposely made universe that was designed with intentional purposes and values and meanings. So, kind of to bring it back to what I was trying to originally say, Islam or nihilism. You can say, what about Christianity and Judaism? But those two religions can arguably be kind of falsified, right? Judaism is actually, even as it exists now, Orthodox Judaism was only established in the Middle Ages. So it's relatively newer than Islam. And also you have to kind of think about how all of the manuscripts of the Torah, of the Hebrew Bible, they cannot be accurately dated to the biblical prophets, to Moses, right? The oldest Torah is found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, but that's hundreds of years after Moses, right? So as that, and for Christianity, the Bible contains numerous contradictions, right? Jesus has different genealogies depending on the Gospel of Matthew or the Gospel of Luke. The Old Testament has, of course, its own contradictions. You can just kind of Google and research about Bible contradictions. You can find dozens of examples. That's how I would falsify Christianity. And ultimately, if you have to decide between the Abrahamic faith, you would land on Islam, because the Quran is more coherent compared to the Hebrew Bible or to the Gospels or to the general Bible used for Christianity. So if you want to decide between the Abrahamic faith, you should feel more inclined towards Islam. Also, you have to think about the manuscript evidence of the Quran is a lot more compelling. We have the Birmingham Quran manuscript. Right? We have manuscripts of the Quran that can be dated just a little after the time of the Prophet Muhammad. The Birmingham Quran manuscript, that's a manuscript of the Quran. It's nearly identical to the modern Quran, and it can be dated exactly to the time when Muhammad was alive. So it's kind of, from a historical perspective, Islam's a lot more credible. The Gospels, they come 200 years after Jesus. Right? The oldest manuscripts of the Gospels can only be dated to the 2nd century, not exactly to the time of Jesus, compared to the Birmingham Quran manuscript, which can be dated exactly to the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So it's something you should really consider. Now, moving on. So what about the other pagan religions? What about Hinduism and all of these other non-Abrahamic faiths? These other religions can easily be falsified, because the pagan gods were material gods that were alleged to exist in our material world, but we can't trace their existence and how we can't observe any of their presence. That's how you could quickly falsify any beliefs in some type of pagan god, because allegedly those gods were material. Their presence was here on earth. They were interacting with us, but they're not doing that now, and that's kind of suspicious. And of course, what about the Abrahamic God? Well, what about Allah for Islam? Well, the Islamic God was alleged to be immaterial, to be beyond our physical world. So it's harder to falsify in that way. But let's to kind of bring it back to what I was trying to originally claim, that nihilism, ultimately you would have to decide between Islam or nihilism. Islam, the most coherent faith, the most credible faith out of the Abrahamic tradition, or nihilism, which is like kind of the conclusion to the rationalist, atheist, materialist paradigm, right? It is the most logical conclusion to that specific way of thinking, right? This way of thinking that we're just cold, mechanical machines, we're byproducts of a cosmic accident in a long chain of evolution that was blind and uncaring for our meanings and purposes and values. Yeah, nihilism could easily, you should be able to kind of see how it relates to this type of paradigm, this new atheist, materialist, rationalist paradigm. So yeah, ultimately either we were created or we're just random accidents, and our existence is completely absurd. That's what it has to. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Ultimately, if you kind of really think about it, hopefully you should be kind of thinking about this, right?